Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Political Soup. So this is a special edition because it's just me and of course a special guest. Essentially, what happened is during our last broadcast, in an effort to try and simplify things so that I could make them easily understood, I completely changed the meaning of something. So I have Julian here who called me out on that, and I believe it or not, I really appreciate that he did. So without further ado, let's Julian, can you explain where I went wrong?
Yeah, at first I want to apologize. I was kind of nitpicking. I was multitasking and I'd switched over to another screen and was just listening to you guys talking in the background, and you'd basically said Bitcoin used encryption, and so I heard that and I flipped over and I just typed in like, oops, we're gonna have an issue here. Basically, Bitcoin doesn't use any encryption. It uses cryptography, and specifically two subdomains of cryptography: digital signatures and cryptographic hashing. So that yeah. That was my main point. But the rest of the interview was interesting.
Well, thanks. Yeah, actually, honestly, it was it was me trying to simplify things, and I botched it. But in any case,
very common thing.
In any case, actually, can you tell us a little bit about Bitcoin and what specifically, give us an idea of what Bitcoin is.
Okay, at the highest level, it's a digital currency that operates with it's a payment network and a digital currency. This payment network, the foundation of it is a distributed ledger that if you imagined everybody sitting around a table and there's an account ledger on the table, and every time somebody spends money to another person, they write down in the ledger, and everybody gets to look at this ledger and verify that the person had the money to spend, and verifying that it wasn't spent, stuff like that. And just like a regular accounting ledger, this has pages in it, and you flip the pages and you can write more stuff on it. If you think of these pages that get full, these are what's called the block. And every time somebody flips one of these pages, they're doing a proof of work that they've done this verification for everybody. And for doing this work, they get rewarded a reward value. And that's how Bitcoins come into creation. There's basically, the easiest way to think about this is there's the person that does this cryptographic proof of work gets to write their own transaction from nobody to themselves in the amount of this reward value. The reward value is a computation that basically the first 210,000 blocks that get created, the value starts off at 50, and every 210,000 blocks after that, the reward gets cut in half. So, the first about 4 years is 50 Bitcoins, and then the next 4 years is 25, and then, 12 and a half, whatever, and it keeps going down, cutting in half every 210,000 blocks until eventually in around, I think it's the year 2140, there is no more reward. And so that's how Bitcoins cease to be generated anymore. But back to this analogy of everybody sitting around the table watching people write entries into this accounting ledger and doing the work of, they can independently verify the work, they can verify the proof of work that's been done, they can look at the transactions and see where the money has come from and gone to through the accounts. They can't tell who owns those accounts, but they can see the movement of the values from account to account. So that's like the gist of how Bitcoin works. And there's one more thing that I should throw in there, that there's a feedback loop in how fast these accounting pages can be flipped over, how often these blocks can be created, which create the inflation money. You can't just flip these accounting pages or create these blocks. You're doing it competitively with everybody else. And this feedback loop basically says every 2,000 pages that we build, we're going to go back and look at the date stamps on that 2,000th block back and see how long it took to compute those 2,000 blocks. If it was more than 2 weeks, then we have to make this proof of work problem harder, which means you have to throw more computing power at it to keep up that rate or to make it go faster or whatever. And if it took longer than 2 weeks, then everybody agrees to make this proof of work problem easier, so that on average, over the life of Bitcoin, these blocks can only be created on an average of once every 10 minutes.
Okay, so that kind of makes things a little bit more predictable.
Absolutely, we absolutely know, like within a good percentage, what the inflation rate will be over the 130 years from now.
Okay, that makes sense. Is it money?
It absolutely is money. I wrote a blog probably about a year ago, something like, yeah, it was a year ago to this month.
I'll post that in the notes, by the way.
Okay, if you do a search for properties of good money, the domain name that I wrote it under was coin4me.com or coin4.me. But basically what it does is it lists properties of good money. There's divisibility, portability, scarcity, fungibility, durability, and all of these. Bitcoin is almost like the perfect money because it fits all of these things just perfectly. It's highly divisible. For each Bitcoin, there's 100 million Satoshi. So for that 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist, there's actually 2.1 quadrillion cents, or they call them Satoshi, in the currency that can be split up and divided against the people in the economy using it.
That kind of lends to. I've heard a lot of people suggest that most ordinary people couldn't own them because they're too scarce. But that kind of says it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. 2.1 quadrillion is a really big number. There's enough units of the currency to support a global economy for sure. As a matter of fact, if you do the math, I have a spreadsheet that I can probably show you. I'll send you a link that you can put in the video. But it shows that for one single Satoshi to equal a U.S. penny, the exchange rate of a full Bitcoin has to be $1 million. So, people looking at $100 per Bitcoin, it's just not a world economy right now. But if it does attain that status, a single Satoshi has for a single Satoshi to equal a U.S. penny in today's value, the Bitcoin exchange rate for one Bitcoin has to be $1 million, and there's no way around that. It's like simple math. And when you see this graph that I have, I'll send you the link. You'll see it's very clear, and you can do the math yourself. There's just no way around it.
Beautiful.
So the question just comes down to, will Bitcoin be adopted by the rest of the world? And so I'll let everybody else draw their own conclusions. But
so you said that that it's not a world economy, and for the cost to be that. There's been a lot of talk recently. Are we in a bubble?
I don't think so. The thing is the barrier to entry for Bitcoin is zero. Anybody can go and get a wallet instantly right now and start using it. If you look at the blog that I wrote about the properties of good money, you can read the definitions, you can look at what Bitcoin is and how it works, and you can see that it really is almost perfect money, short of requiring the internet to function. It really is. It fits all of these definitions of good money. So the virility of the internet means that everybody can find out about Bitcoin tomorrow, and if they appreciated the benefits that Bitcoins offer, then it could literally, theoretically, it could go to that $1 million and that's it. So I think the potential is there. I don't know. I'm not a financial dude, so the terms like bubbles, and crashes, and stuff like that, they just kind of gloss over. I gloss over when I hear them, because I'm looking at the potential, the overall potential of Bitcoin and where it is in the world right now. There's just, if there's 1 million people using Bitcoin right now, I would be surprised. And if that's the case, there's 7 billion people on the planet. That's a huge difference of that, huge potential demand that could change things drastically overnight because of the virility of that.
Well, it certainly changed a lot of things for a lot of folks in Cyprus.
Right.
I mean, when they confiscated money, there were several people that just threw it in there into Bitcoin, and what a brilliant thing. I mean, that's one of the major pluses to this. I think is that it's bigger than nations.
Right.
So now, actually, that brings me to another question.
I have one more thing to add to that, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure, please.
Bitcoins are, if you take care of them properly. I mean, we're in this new phase of humanity where we have to learn new technology. But once you learn this new technology, Bitcoins are absolutely unseizable. You can create Bitcoin keys offline using a passphrase that you can remember. It has to be really secure, but the gist of it is that you can create Bitcoins offline from an online computer, spend Bitcoins to those offline keys, erase, destroy, set on fire that computer, whatever, and the internet, tens of thousands of computers around the world will remember that transaction into those keys that are now only really stored inside of your head. There is no way that any government organization, thief or whatever, can get to that money without rubber hose attacking you. But then they have to know first that you have access to those keys. So really, it is the world's first unseizable asset. Ron Paul the other day said, if I can't put it in my pocket, I have problems with that. And I just want to, if you're listening, that if you have something that you can put in your pocket, the government can take it away from you. So it's something to consider.
Yeah.
But brain wallets are one of my most favorite things to play around with. It's to see it working is really, really neat.
Okay. So actually, another criticism that I've heard, and of course, I think you're gonna hit this one out of the park. This is a pretty easy one, I think. What happens if the internet goes down, or if say the United States starts to go all China on us and starts to regulate the internet such that not everything can get through?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to knock this one out of the park. This is a very difficult question. The internet was built to route around damage, so I think that would be a heavy task for anybody to do. There is the potential of localized internet outage, but as far as mass internet outage, I don't really subscribe to that. I think because of the ability to route around damage, the internet will be resilient. There will be localized outages, same as power. When power goes out, I remember California's power was out for like 8 hours or so, and merchants just shut down, or they processed cash. I mean, if their credit card systems don't have electricity, they don't work. So I really don't I don't worry about that too much. And also, the internet, as far as the United States is concerned, is critical infrastructure, and it's not going to go away. There might be firewalls that go up between countries, but again, I think that there's plenty of ways to route around that kind of damage, especially with stuff like Tor and mesh nets.
So if the the United States goes all control happy and decides to do things such as the filtering that China does to us. Is there any recovery from that?
Well, so what's going to happen if the network does get segmented like that? There's going to be isolated blocks that will continue development. So there's miners behind each side of these firewalls, and they will continue mining the blockchain. If they become significantly diverse, then probably what's going to happen is that there will be forks in the blockchain, and they'll remember their transactions and we'll remember ours. I think there's some things that need to be thought about that. I really haven't thought about it fully or talked about it with other people enough to come up with what would that look like.
Yeah.
But that's what I've got so far.
Okay.
As long as one node though can see through that firewall somehow, then these transaction records can get broadcast. They propagate pretty well. So I don't know. It's some bigger brains than me have to think about that one.
and that's a hypothetical that the chances of it happening are probably pretty slim.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on government taxation, government control of it? I mean, it seems like you're suggesting that it's harder for governments to get their hands on. Is there?
Well, okay. So Bitcoin is a lot like cash. You can trade it and not report your earnings. So you have in the United States, you have a duty to report your earnings with cash sales, and with Bitcoin it's no different. It's just another currency. So if you're going to be a tax cheat, then there are ways the government has to find out if you're doing that or not, and you're taking a criminal risk to do that. There's a liability for doing that. So it's up to the individual to make those kind of decisions.
Okay.
Now, in a my utopian view of the world, it would be really neat to see states initiate voluntary contributions, and one of the things that they could do is say, here's a Bitcoin address for public roads in this county, and here's another Bitcoin address for public health, or whatever, and people could voluntarily contribute money into the programs that they saw fit. And the ones that got funded could survive, and the ones that didn't get funded would go away. I think that would be really interesting to see. And this is one of the neat things about Bitcoin, is that we get to rethink how we want to do society. It's really, it gives me goosebumps thinking about all the different new ways of doing things that haven't even been thought about yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's an exciting thing. I believe that this goes far beyond currency. I think that it just
that's a great point. There are people think Bitcoin is a digital currency and that's it, but I ask everybody to go do a Google search of Mike Hearn London Bitcoin conference and listen to what he has to say. There are things that Bitcoin can do that haven't been written yet. There are each transaction basically processes a script, and these scripts do. I think there's 2 scripts right now. It's a single key-to-key transaction, and then a multi-key to a multi-key or single-key transaction. But literally, anybody can write. Anybody can write a new script to do. Two-party escrows and contracts, and self-executing contracts, and it's not like science fiction stuff. It's stuff that we know theoretically how to do. Somebody just has to write the code to do it. So imagine flipping open your Bitcoin wallet and signing a challenge from your door lock on your house to unlock the door and go inside. You don't need keys anymore. Stuff like that. The science fiction stuff is really here. It's just a matter of somebody writing the code to do it.
Yeah, this is a beautiful thing. I mean, and for me, the wonderful part about this is it's completely free and open. It's the marketplace at work. That's a
Yeah.
brilliant thing. Um, so actually, my next question, I'm going to steal something, a post from Jeffrey Tucker earlier today. He posted something about, I think it was Cashmere Hill of Forbes. She's living on Bitcoin for a week.
Okay.
What are your thoughts? Is that possible? I mean,
it is becoming rapidly more and more possible. I run a website here in Vegas called bitcoinsinvegas.com, and we have, I don't know, maybe a dozen merchants that are accepting Bitcoins now for all kinds of things. You know, one lady is a real estate agent, and she'll let you rent, lease, buy commercial or residential properties for Bitcoin. She's got about 100 or 200 properties listed. I'm in talks with one of the gas stations here in town that you'll be able to buy gas with your Bitcoins. There's two merchants right now, restaurants, Cafe Berlin and Brooklyn Bagels, that accepts Bitcoin. So you can get your food, you get your gas, you get your place to stay. It's getting very, very close to being able to survive on Bitcoins. Absolutely.
I know, reading the article, she had a little bit of problems finding coffee, and then she posted that, of course, and then she allowed comments, and underneath in the comments there were probably a good 5 or 6 people that said, well, you can get coffee here and you can get coffee here, and
yeah.
and one of the other ones just said, well, if you really want Starbucks, which is what she was actually craving, then you can actually log on to this site and they'll send you a card that you can take in and just.
I'll take that a step further. The merchants don't necessarily have to accept Bitcoins, but the person standing behind the counter, working the cashier, if they accept Bitcoins, there's nothing stopping them from, letting you pay their smartphone and then them sticking their own money in the exchange or in the till. It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as time goes on, I think more and more people will start seeing the beauty of this and seeing how simple it is and how wonderful and freeing it is, actually.
Oh yeah, if you stick to really immersing yourself in Bitcoin and looking for ways to spend it, when you see how easy it is to send money to, oh dude, I don't have any money, can you pay for this and I'll pay back later, and on your way home you pick up your phone you left in your car and you send it to them while you're driving home, like just stuff like that. It's so liberating. It's a really, really awesome feeling to experience. Yeah.
So actually, going back to some of the potential negatives, there've been a couple of hacks with the wallets, I guess, that kind of simplify the creation of wallets and the like. What are your thoughts? I mean, is this commonplace? Is this going to be something that we're going to see a lot in the future, or?
Well, there already is a lot of cybercrime. I don't see that going away anytime soon. People really have to have a good grip on being safe on their computer. Just safe browsing habits. Perhaps even using a dedicated computer for finances. That's probably a very smart way to go. Learn how to use a live CD when you're playing with your Bitcoins. A live CD is basically like a Linux distro that you boot your computer onto this CD and it never touches your hard drive. There's no data ever written to your hard drive, and every time you boot it up, it's a fresh, clean install of the operating system in RAM. so that it's you know, pristine state. That's a really good security feature. But the security thing is it's really tough. People just have to learn, and sometimes through bad experiences. You know, you get burnt once, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I can't do that anymore. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of people learn. There's a thing called crypto parties. And I highly recommend people do Google search for in their local area for a crypto party. I host one here in Las Vegas once a month. It's the third Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. at a place called the Beat Coffee House. And basically we invite everybody to bring their laptops, smartphones, tablets, whatever. Come on in. We teach you how to use PGP, VPN networks, proxies, Tor, TrueCrypt, stuff like that. So these and it's all free. It's volunteer. Just Google crypto parties in your area, and you'll have a really good opportunity to learn some computer security and personal privacy on the internet.
I'm sure that probably there may be something on Meetup as well.
Right. Meetup is a great resource to look up different groups in your area.
So. Actually, I've also the other guys that normally are on this show. They sent me some questions to ask you as well. And let's see, Nick is wondering what would the hacking of the system do to the valuation of Bitcoin. His fear is generally that. Unlike gold, let's see, my fear, unlike gold, is someone figures out a way to make Bitcoins outside the appropriate channels, thus messing with the supply and altering the equilibrium.
Okay, so if we go back to that analogy that I mentioned about the everybody sitting around the table watching everybody write their transactions into this accounting ledger, there is if you remember how the Bitcoins come into creation, the person that solves this proof of work of verifying all these transactions on an accounting page, they get to write one single transaction onto this accounting ledger that says from nobody to themselves in the amount of whatever this reward value is. And then the page gets turned and more transactions, you know, get written on that page, and people work on that problem. So also remember the feedback loop that I mentioned. If you create pages faster than is what's allowed in the protocol, then the problem of this proof of work thing gets harder. If the people can't solve the problems fast enough, then the problem gets easier. So this feedback loop prevents people from just creating Bitcoins, you know, randomly or outside of the system. And because everybody is sitting around the table looking at this accounting ledger, you can see somebody trying to do fraud and just ignore them. If they try and write in a transaction that, you know, they're writing their own transaction from nobody to myself, they can be like, you know, that's crap. That we're just going to ignore that part. Yeah. So that's where the strength of this system comes from, is that you really have to have more computing power than anybody else does in the network combined to make something like that happen. And even then, there's only certain things that you can do. I will probably shoot myself in the foot if I go into that, because I'm not really familiar again with those options. But you can't. Okay. You can't reverse transactions farther back than when you started your attack. And there's a couple different. If you do a search for Gavin Anderson 51% attack, he wrote a blog on what you can actually do with a 51% attack and what you can't do. And he lays it out very, very clear. So if you're curious about that, I recommend looking that up. And maybe I can give you the link to that article, and you can put it in the footnotes too.
Okay.
Actually, one more thing on the security, sure, though. Sure. Yeah. The accounts that you have are distributed, so that there's no one place for an attacker to go to, say, steal your Bitcoin keys. If somebody is known to have a large holding in Bitcoins, they can be singled out. But otherwise, the keys that let you spend this money are distributed against the entire world. There's no central place for them to go and attack. So that's a huge strength there too. Now, there comes a problem with personal security on your computer, because if malware starts going around and you get infected, and they can record, keystrokes and look at wallet files that haven't been encrypted and stuff like that, then there can be a mass stealing, or mass theft. So that's something that needs to be, thought about. But as an individual, you have the power to prevent that individually. And there was something else about the thefts at services. I think we learned in 2011, when MT Gox got hacked, there was a big scare, and oh my gosh, Bitcoin's dead in the end and all that stuff. But I think people quickly learned that those kind of attacks are an attack on a service built on Bitcoin and not Bitcoin itself. So you're going to see exchanges getting hacked. You're going to see wallet thefts like InstaWallet and Bitfloor and stuff like that. But those are services built on top of Bitcoin. Those services had some kind of vulnerability and were exploited, and theft happened at that level. But the actual Bitcoin protocol worked flawlessly through all of it.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it oftentimes, I mean, with situations like this, I mean, it makes sense that kind of the services on top would be the more vulnerable services. But actually, the next question from Danon, who's usually here also, is there any attention that Bitcoin has gotten from the U.S. government or the Federal Reserve, and what do you anticipate for the future in that regard?
Yeah, so the organization that prosecutes or investigates financial crimes, called FinSEN, has issued some guidance rules or guidance for their enforcement of laws, and they've said that if you're a miner and you are creating bitcoins, then you have to have a money services license if you're going to sell those. I don't want to quote any of those things because I might get those wrong. But the basic is that the U.S. government is aware of it. They have issued some guidelines for people to follow. They are a little bit restrictive in some sense for exchanges and miners, but everything else, it basically comes down to not transacting in more than like $1,000 a day with one person. It's treated like a barter transaction. You're supposed to report your capital gains for taxation, stuff like that. So it's completely legal to use. I guess they've almost kind of legitimized it as a currency themselves by making these rulings or publishing these guidelines. So I think it's favorable. And with the in my opinion, Bitcoin, as a purist, Bitcoin is absolutely anonymous. There's nothing in the blockchain that records your name with this account that was created and recorded, account that was recorded in the blockchain as a balance being transferred to it. So in that sense, Bitcoin is absolutely anonymous. But as you receive Bitcoins and spend them to other accounts, again, this is an open ledger that everybody sitting around this table can look and see, like, this account had this much money, and then it was sent to this account. So it's like tying a string to a dollar bill every time you send it to somebody, so you can see, where the dollar has been, but you just don't know who's the person's name that was holding it at that time. But there is a domain of mathematics and analysis called Bayesian analysis that will eventually allow, I don't think it's developed for the blockchain yet, but it will be. But you can make inferences between spins that are recorded in the blockchain. And if somebody reveals their address, like say on a web page, they put a donation address. Well, that donation address is linked to a wallet that has money coming in and out of it. So you can kind of infer that, you know, Joe posted this address on his blog, so any other transactions coming into addresses around this address is, you know, high probability that it's Joe, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it for the government, I think they would actually like Bitcoin because of this lack of anonymity. You know, it goes towards, you know, they like to know where everybody's money is going. Sure. There are ways to mitigate those risks. I won't go into any of those, but it is possible to break those ties. But you have to be pretty well up to speed on how things work to do that. But for the average person, they're not going to take
want it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for the most part, the government will appreciate Bitcoin's openness.
And actually, the last question from the group is from John, and he asks if mining bitcoins is no longer worth the cost of electricity that it takes to run the software, why does anybody still do it?
Okay, so this is an interesting question. Bitcoin is absolutely beta. We don't know how society is going to react to any piece of this. I mean, you know, this is the world's first deflationary currency, a truly deflationary currency, even more so than gold. Like, we keep digging gold up out of the ground, or there's, you know, asteroids that you know, might fall on the Earth and deposit a, you know, bunch more gold, whatever. We don't know. So Bitcoin's is has a lot of properties that the world just hasn't seen before. We don't know how we're going to react to any of these situations. The pressures and circumstances that Bitcoin has been put under so far, especially like that hard fork that happened a couple of months ago, I mean, people really saw a resilience and confidence in what was going on. So as far as the mining stuff, you know, I said earlier on that in 130 years or so, Bitcoins will cease to be brought into existence, but there is a fee that is voluntary right now that can be associated with each transaction, and theoretically those fees are what will support the miners contributing to this security of the ledger. By, you know, you'll get the fees if you solve these proof of work problems. And another piece of this Bitcoin puzzle is that the blocks of, like, you know, an accounting page only has so much space. You can only write so many transactions into this accounting page. So what miners are going to have to do, they're going to have to eventually start making decisions. Like, you know, I can fit 100 transactions on this page, but I've got 150 transactions to put on here. So who am I going to include? Who am I going to not include? And their incentive is to pick the ones that have the highest fees, because they, you know, that's their incentive. So there will be not only competition for the scarce monetary units of Bitcoin, but there will be competition for the scarce real estate in the blockchain. I think that's absolutely just fantastic to think about where that's going to go. And there's a couple other things that are related to this that I like thinking about. One is, you know, if Bitcoin, if the scarcity of this block becomes so tight, will it become a reserve currency where you're not using it to buy coffee every day, but you're using it to transfer larger capital wealth to, you know, to invest in real estate, or, you know, build a business or something like that? You know, kind of like how gold is held right now.
I've thought about that too. That's an interesting prospect.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things that society just has never been exposed to. We've never seen a new currency like this, global currency, sprout up from nothing. And, you know, how are we gonna deal with this? What are we gonna think about it?
Yeah.
It's really, really fascinating.
Absolutely. Well, actually, that's all the questions that I had. I've absolutely ran out of questions. This has really been a lot of fun. I think we've explored a lot of the awesomeness that is to come. Markets just open up a lot of the world for us, and I think this is a perfect example of it. But actually, if you would, go ahead and plug your site again, because the more Bitcoin that we can get around here, I think that's
Sure. All right, I have two sites. One is bitcoinsinvegas.com. If you guys are coming to Vegas, take a look at the site and see if there's any merchants that you want to come and patronize with your Bitcoins. And the other thing is coinbus.com. I'm a authorized payment integrator for BitPay. So if you need a web cart set up and want to accept Bitcoins, I can help you do that through BitPay. Yeah.
Wonderful. So this has been absolutely incredibly fun for me. It's always great for me to talk to somebody that's generally of like mind, and we're both Austrians, so that's as far as economics, both Austrians. That's a really fun thing. But in any case, I've been talking to Julian, and thanks a lot, guys, for watching, and we'll see you on Monday.
Thanks a lot. That was a fun interview.